Okay. I'm seeing if maybe this link works better. Try the new link. Let's see. I don't know if maybe I just let it sit for too long. You couldn't see me or something. Let's see. Gear. I try and I try. This worked. Okay, Lizzie, you say this worked. All right, good deal. John, are you there? All right. Lizzie, to answer your question, no, it's not husband hunting, even though we all kind of enjoy that a little bit. No, what it means is, let's say young geese, when they've imprinted, because of that critical period, they will learn through watching their parents what kind of mate they should find. So so imprinting helps to involve and then evolve, I guess would be a good way to say it, the mating patterns or show an organism who their mating partner should be ultimately. Okay. Oh, and Aletha is texting. Is it posted as well? I don't know what she means. The link is on Classroom. So we'll try that. I'll see if I can somehow, I'll add the link real quick into the remind, see if that helps for some people if you're not on. And you have to use your phone, I guess, for some of you. Let me add this real quick. Oh my goodness. The things that I do for y'all. Sheesh. Y'all are lucky I love y'all. Ah! I wish this would stop assuming what I want to write. It's annoying. Okay. Next question. I have a few things that I can talk about that I already kind of had planned in my mind, but Lizzie, did that answer your question pretty good? 44H. Ooh, 8. CU. I'm seeing if this is the right length in case you have to use your phone for it. Because I don't know where y'all are. Who knows where you're at? There's the link. Hopefully that works for you. All right. Okay. Hopefully that answered your question. Yes. Good. Awesome. Okay. Things we could definitely look at real quick would be, if we needed to look at population equations at all, kind of go back through what some of those variables actually mean and your equations on your formula sheet. Maybe that would be a little bit helpful. Let me kind of put this first one down real quick and let's see if we can break it down. I have a green marker, so it might not show up as well as I would like. All right, so dn over dt. All you're saying when you see dn over dt is you're seeing change in a population over a certain amount of time, whatever that time is. It could be a year, it could be a month, it could be 10 years, whatever, okay? On your formula sheet, it says capital B minus D. I have a little bit of an issue with this. It just kind of frustrates me, just a hint, because I wish that they would have put the other way that it should actually be written, which is haha. Can you see the difference? Lowercase b minus d. How does that change things? It actually changes things pretty big. Capital B in capital D, this is what we would call the crude birth and death numbers, not a per capita. This is like out of, let's say this, out of a population of 500 geese, poor geese, I'm picking on the geese tonight, 25 were born and 75 died. So if that was your problem, you got 500. I know you probably can't see that very well, and it's probably completely backwards for you. I'm realizing that probably sucks. Okay, so the capital B and capital D is actually the crude birth number and death number. So you would simply figure it out, well, how many were born in this population? Take how many were born, 25, and divide it by 500. That now gets you, and somebody just texted me. Aletha, you were asking, where are people asking questions? In the comments. Oh, it is right. Good. Thanks, Lizzie. Are you able to only see the comment side if you're on the computer, maybe? That might be an issue if you're on your cell phone. At the same time, I know this sounds silly, but if you're on your cell phone, turn your side phone sideways. Okay, tell her to click YouTube in the bottom corner and go to actual YouTube. Ah, that's what Lizzie just said. So, Letha, go to actual YouTube. Let me know if you can hear me or anything, okay? All right, so let's get back to the problem. So, I gave you 500 population and 25 were born. Okay, because on Classroom, it's just a box when you press link. Okay. So if you actually want your per capita, you need to figure out what is it per individual. How many, even though they were born into the population, what does that spread out to be? So take 25 divided by 500. I'm writing this out just so you can see it. Okay, and that'll give you your 0.05. That is your lowercase b. That is your per capita, okay? Do the same thing with the 75 and divide it by the 500. Okay, let me write that out real quick. So now you get 75 divided by 500, and that gets you 15.15. That becomes your lowercase d. You're actually, yay, Aletha, you're here. Your actual death per capita rate. And then B minus D, that equals ultimately your R, guys. Your lowercase r. R is your per capita increase or your intrinsic value of increase. That lowercase r simply is telling you how much has my population changed. Is my population changing at all? Is it increasing because my birth rate is higher than my death rate? Or is it decreasing because death rate's higher than birth rate? But you have to figure out what those rates are first. Okay? Subtract them, and then that gets you your R. Whatever that R value is. That R value could be a 0.07. That R value could be a 1.2. Okay? That R value could also end up being 0, right? No growth at all, right? But if your R value ends up getting smaller over time, that's telling you that your population is decreasing. Your death rate has increased too much, okay? All right, let's see. Other questions. Let me see if I can erase this real quick. All right, so other things in your equations. So that's the population growth, dn over dt. That's your very first one, okay? I'm switching over to the formula sheet real quick, making sure I'm not skipping anything. Let me know if you can't see me anymore for some reason. I'm not really sure. You know, we're just rolling with the punches. Oh, I can't see anything. It's too small. It's too small. Okay, and then right after the population growth, it goes into the exponential growth. Right, so let me just break that down again. So you're still using dn over dt. We're chill, I can see, awesome. You're still doing dn over dt because you're still trying to see how's my population changed. It's just with the exponential growth rate, you are working with unlimited resources, technically speaking. We know that there's always going to be something, but populations working with unlimited resources, they're going to be able to maximize their population growth. So in your exponential, you have your R, which is just your intrinsic population per capita growth. Okay. How much has your population changed per individuals? Okay. Which is either already given to you in the problem, or you may have to solve for it, which is simply B minus D, the per capitas. And then multiply that by your capital N, which is simply just your population. So if you want to see how much your entire population is growing, take whatever that point value is. It's going to be some kind of point value, and multiply it by whatever your total population ends up being. And that's all your exponential is, totally. Boom, that's all your exponential growth ends up being. Now, the next part of that question, maybe I want very specifically what my new population will be after my growth. That's where you need to pay attention to after you've done your R times your N, because R can be negative, guys. If your R times your N, you need to look and see what happened, because if it's a positive, and let's say that that growth ends up being 75, and you started in, your N started out as 500, and after you did your calculations, you got 75. A positive 75. So your new population is now 575. That looks like a horrible 5. But let's say that that R actually was negative R, and that actually gave you a negative 12 out of your 500. So now you got to subtract it from your 500 and give yourself a 488. Did I do that math right? I think I did. Bam! Quick math. Okay. So pay attention to whatever that value is. And the difference in this question is, I want the exponential growth. You stop there. Bam. I want the growth, or I want the estimated population size after exponential growth. Okay. Wait, can you go over the 75 part again? Okay. So let me do this again. Okay, so dn over dt, Rn. Let's say your N is 500 and your R is 0.5. Bam. Say your R is 0.5, like it was given to you in a problem already. Bam. You know, some kind of butterfly, 500 population, has a intrinsic growth of 0.5, has a per capita growth rate of 0.5. It could be phrased different ways. Simply just multiply those together. I have my handy dandy little phone real quick because I'm not going to attempt to do this in my head. You got to be kidding me. So your dn over dt equals 250. You with me on that part? All I did was multiplied Rn, exponential growth rate, nothing to it. But that is my growth rate. I want the next part of the question where I say, what will the population size be after exponential growth? So take your growth rate. This is how much it's changed. And combine it with your original. So since this is a positive value, my population is now 750. Good? Feel a little bit better on that? The only thing you would do to change it, what I was saying the other thing was, let's say this intrinsic value is negative because you actually had more deaths in the population than you did births. So that B minus D. So now that 250 is a negative 250, and you got to subtract it from the 500. So my new population after this month or year, whatever the change in time is now only 250 in that population. Okay? So understand which part of the question I'm asking for, if I just want the growth or if I want the size of the population after the growth. All right. Okay, Aletha. Oh, you said no, not Aletha. You were good. I have not gone over logistic. No, hold on. I'm about to do logistic right now. You got on just in time. All right, so now look at the logistic side of things. So you're still having to use the exponential growth part. You're still having to use R times N. That doesn't change. But now you got to factor in carrying capacity. So that's where you've got to take your K minus the N and divide it by the K again. So now you've got your logistic equation, which takes into account exponential growth. We're concerned about that, but also takes into account carrying capacity. In a logistic growth equation, one of the biggest factors is your carrying capacity variable. K alters everything. As N approaches K, here's what I mean. Remember, logistic equations or logistic growths get to a point where they start to taper off and they start to plateau because that is the carrying capacity. So it starts to look kind of like an S curve. The reason it's an S curve is because almost all populations that operate around the carrying capacity usually hyper explode and have a burst, realize they ran out of resources, and then they have to come back down. Okay? So because we're always operating close to that K, if your population, listen to this carefully, as your population approaches K, look at my line. Look at how the shape of my line is changing. It's now flattening. So what does that tell you about your R value? Think about that. As N approaches K, what is my population growth rate now? It's approaching closer to 0 because my line is flattening out. I don't have enough resources to support my entire population. So as N, my population, approaches my K, my carrying capacity, my population growth rate declines, starts to approach 0, however you want to phrase it, but it decreases from whatever it was. Okay? So K is a huge important factor when it comes to logistic. Now, the only thing you're going to do on this equation, you're going to have the exact same components. It's just now you're probably trying to solve for, again, you're going to plug everything in, but you're solving for, again, the growth rate. But now the problem's going to say the logistic growth rate. So everything still gets plugged in. So let's say I'm dealing with a population of wolves that survive currently at 500 of them. I'm going to keep this easy. Intrinsic rate of 0.5 positive. So they're increasing. And they have a carrying capacity of 1,200. So 500, 1,200. Right there, you're working that out in your head. And you're like, okay, well, they're nowhere really near their carrying capacity yet. So that tells you you're going to have some positive growth. So when you plug that all in, 0.5, that's your R, times 500, which is your N. Next parentheses, 1,200 minus the 500, K minus N divided by 1,200 again. Okay? So plug all that into the calculator. Okay? I'm just doing this real quick. And I'm getting a dN over dt of 145.83. Okay. And that my population is going to have a growth rate in this month or year of 145.83 wolves on average. Again, I want the population size after 1 month. Add that to my N. I get the 645.83. Okay. All right. Good on that. Questions from that? Let me know. Made sense. Thanks. Okay. All right. Let me see. Other things from the formula sheet we might look at. Well, really, that's kind of it. The only other part I would say, let's mention, no, it's not really on there. I mean, that's really the only math components. That was it. Oh, the other one, the mark and recapture one. I put some more, I think I put some more on the quizzes that I posted, but y'all could certainly look at that. Okay, so let's say I'm looking at a pretty little butterfly. Look at that pretty little butterfly. And I capture 12 butterfly first, the first time around. And then the second time around, I capture 42 butterfly. But the butterflies that were marked were 9. So I first captured 12. I released them, let them flutter around. About an hour, maybe even a day or two later, I grabbed them up again, and this time I was able to capture 42 in the exact same spot. But this time when I counted, I actually had 9 that I already caught before. Okay? 12 times 42 divided by 9. That's your estimated population. Yeah, that's all it is. It's your N1 times your N2 divided by your mark. N1 times N2 divided by the mark population. And that's all it is for mark and recapture. Okay? N1 times N2 divided by mark. Really, that's kind of it. If you get the chance, can you break down the Batesian and Mullerian mimicry again? That was the only thing I still had trouble with. No problem. John, are we good on mark and recapture? Yeah, yes. I hope so. All right, sure. John, that's not really convincing. You're acting like you need a practice or something to it. I mean, if I work this out, I would have gotten my population to be 56 on the butterfly one. Okay. N times N divided by marked. I'll be fine. Good deal. Okay. All right. That's it for math. The only other one that I'm not gonna bother asking it. I'm not gonna bother asking for the math part. But it was the 2 definitions: gross primary productivity and net primary productivity. Okay. The primary productivity, that was letting you know how much energy are your producers making gross. How much potential energy do your producers in your trophic level make for everybody else? Okay. But remember, there's 100% down here, but only 10% gets to travel. That's because 90% of it's got to be used for that plant to simply survive. 90% of it's being lost to the environment as heat. Okay. So gross primary productivity and net. Gross is the maximum amount of energy that is available. Net is what's actually being passed on. Net is after you've taken out energy necessary for organisms to survive. So essentially, respiration. So you see it. This isn't a formula on your formula sheet. Could it potentially be a mark recapture kind of question on the AP? Maybe. Slight possibility. I'm not too concerned about it. That's why I'm not really focused on it, but I just want to show it to you anyways. Take your gross primary productivity. You see it usually shortened as GPP. That will equal, sorry. I wrote that word. Sorry. Take your net primary productivity, what you're going to have available. That equals the gross primary productivity minus any respiration done by your primary producers. Okay? What they make minus what they have to use. Kind of makes sense, right? Ultimately, you end up with the net primary productivity, which is always going to be less than the gross. Okay? You always net less than you gross. We don't like that, but that's just life. All right. So yeah, those are your formulas, right? Everything else is basically just terminology. Sorry, I'm trying to get comfortable. Okay. So Batesian and Mullerian and all of that stuff. So all of those are survival strategies is how they're kind of summed up. Organisms that need to figure out a better way to adapt and survive over time, they've evolved to have this as their strategy. Other organisms, they've evolved to be faster. They've evolved to be thicker hide, whatever. Some organisms evolve to mimic or have color cryption or cryptic color. Okay, so strategies for any of this. First strategy is coloration. So somehow organisms have figured out a way to change their coloration. There are two options for this. Cryptic, which simply means, hey, I'm going to blend in, right? I'm going to look like a stick, walking stick bug. I'm going to look like a leaf, Katie did, praying mantis. I'm going to look like a branch or a stem or a flower stem, grasshoppers, right? Cryptic coloration, that's strategy 1. Strategy 2 for coloration, aposematic. Okay. This is mostly just strategy to say, hey, I'm bad news. You best back off. Aposematic means they're giving you warning colors. So that's the king coral snake, right? Wait, did I say king coral? Is that? No, sorry. Coral snake versus the king snake. Sorry. Anyways, trying to give you colorations. That's the poison dart frog. They're giving you bright warning colors saying you need to back off. All right. So if it's not coloration, then maybe it's actual mimicry. Two versions for mimicry. You have Batesian versus Mullerian. Okay. So Batesian, the one you want to kind of remember or help to remember is for Batesian, they do not want to be bait. So you have an edible organism that tries to look not edible or palatable, however you want to say it. So all of a sudden you have some kind of worm or some kind of butterfly that normally an organism can eat, like it's safe for them to eat, but they have evolved to mimic something that is not safe to eat. So they went from being edible to now being inedible. Okay, so they don't want to be bait. It's kind of just a trick to use. So that's moths that try and look like vipers or snakes, or butterflies that try and look like they have huge eyes when they really don't. This is also frogs. A lot of frogs and toad species, some of their coloration on the back, they've made them look as if they have large eyes on their back. So they look like they're a larger organism than they should be. Okay, the Mullerian. Mullerian, bad is bad, no matter what. In a Mullerian, a bad organism has a coloration, aposematic coloration, that makes them look bad just like somebody else. This is two horrible individuals basically mimicking one or the other. Which one mimicked one first? I don't know. You would have to go into way evolutionary background to figure out who was first. But in Mollarian, bad equals bad. I don't know. Like I said, Batesian, I would use, it doesn't want to be bait because, he can't defend himself. He's not a harmful organism. I don't know if you want to think Mollarian. I don't know, mullets, they're bad. Nobody likes mullets. Good Lord, I'm hoping that fashion's dying. So Mollarian's bad is bad. Bad organisms, they're bad. Okay, so Mollarian, that would be yellow jackets and honeybees. They both are yellow and black stripes. They both can hurt you. They both can sting. Okay. Another Mollarian example. I'm trying to think of a couple of like snake species that probably, a lot of snake species that have venomous snake species that are similar, like the diamondbacks, the eastern diamondback, the western diamondback, that kind of stuff. They all have the same kind of diamond patterns, despite that they're different species. They're both telling you back off. Now, obviously, the rattle helps, but that's also, you can reverse that, and that's an example of Batesian. There are certain species of non-venomous snakes that will shake their tail, pretending like they have a rattle. And what they've done is they usually are like hitting or clicking next to a leaf or something. And so it scares organisms away when in reality they're absolutely harmless. So, so snakes would be Mollarian, yellow jacket honeybee. Can't think of another one off the top of my head right now. But yeah, a bad just mimics a bad. Let me see if I can find anything else. Okay, Aletha, does that kind of help a little bit? I know my, comparisons are awesome. They're just amazing. Okay. Oh, I totally forgot. The Viceroy and the Monarch would also be a Mollarian. Let's see. Viceroy and Monarch, yeah. Butterflies. Let's see. See if there are any other examples. I don't know. Whoever you think, whenever you think bad organisms that can hurt, there's probably one that's similar. So I'm seeing if there's any more on there. Species of the poison tree frog. Oh, asps. Asps would be, the asp worm would be another example. Many different species of your caterpillars, right? They either, one, have the spikes, and they're telling you, you best back off, I'm going to hurt you. Or they're the fuzzy asp, right? Asp can be fuzzy spikes or the hard spikes. Either one, the spikes are warnings to tell you, you best back off. And so they all kind of mimic each other, and they're all just as bad, but they're actually different species. Oh, interesting. Huh. I was just looking up something, and I did not know that. There is a specific type of cockroach found in the Philippines that mimics ladybugs. Because if you didn't know, ladybug beetles are actually poisonous. They're noxious. They can actually make organisms vomit because usually the plants that they feed on actually kind of build up toxins, kind of like a biological magnification in a way. Anyway, so organisms that eat ladybugs, it actually can make them sick. I don't know if it'd make you sick, but I'm not going to eat any ladybugs at any point in time. So anyways, yeah, there's a Philippine cockroach that actually mimics. So it'd be a Batesian mimicry, but it mimics a deal. Sounds like my kind of conquer, right? Gosh, totally understand, man. Okay, so interesting. The things you learn. All right. Other terminology. I see what I want to pull up. So if you're just kind of looking at the ecology terms and stuff like that, as far as behavioral, proximate versus ultimate, remember the difference between that is the ultimate is answering the why. An ultimate, why would an organism want to have this behavior over this behavior, right? Why would the peacock want to show his bright colored feathers rather than do a song and dance? Why would tree frogs call to their mate rather than, I don't know, meet their mate? Like, why not travel the long distance? Well, right there, it's better to just call for your mate, see if there's a mate around, instead of getting on the tree floor and slowly searching. No, you'd rather find the mate by calling out to them so you know exactly where you're supposed to go. Okay. If it answers the why, you've answered the ultimate cause. The thing about ultimate causes is there's kind of everything. The idea behind proximate and ultimate cause, it can be anything. As long as it's a good based, a logical based hypothesis, it can be a cause. Okay. As long as you work your way through that. As far as the behaviors, you do need to remember the difference between an operant versus a classical. So the classical is you as an organism associate two stimuli to each other. You as an organism, you weren't doing anything. But there was a stimulus occurring that you associated a stimulus with. Okay. So, Dwight heard the click. He started salivating because he associated that with bad breath and mints. Okay. Pavlov's dog heard the bell, started salivating for a treat. So you just associate one stimulus with another, and that's a classical. What's the other? Classical can sometimes be referred to. I'm going to see if I can find this. Sometimes classical can be referred to a little bit different. Associative learning. That's trial and error. In the operant conditioning, what you're doing is you are associating a behavior with a reward or punishment. So you as the organism are identifying something you are doing as being a good or a bad, right? This was B.F. Skinner's. He used mice. He set treats up for the mice. And so if they went to the wrong door, they got shocked. If they went to the right door, they got a treat, right? Unfortunately, a similar kind of experiment also was done later on using still the kind of shock, but they modified it in such a way that the shock caused a pleasure kind of sense for the mice. And so some mice would actually hit the shock multiple times until they actually killed themselves from basically overstimulation. Kind of funny. Yeah, I know, right? Funny. Huh? Kinky. All right. Other things from behavioral stuff, really. Oh, kinesis and taxis. So if a shark smells blood, he is purposely moving towards that blood, because taxis is purposeful movement toward or away from a stimulus. It can be either one, toward it or away. But if it has to be purposely in response to that. If you, right? If you went and, you pick up a log and the insects scatter because you picked it up, they're not running away because of the log. They're running away simply because they've been disturbed. They've been disrupted. Oh, dear Lord. So know the kinesis versus the taxis. Taxis, you get into a taxi and you know where you're going. It's purposeful movement towards or away. I just did something. Okay. Versus kinesis, just like kinetic, it's just movement. You're just constantly moving. You have no purpose. It's random movement if it's kinesis. Okay. Inclusive fitness, kin selection, altruism, all that kind of stuff. So, yes, you can relate that term, that I'm not going to ask you about called coefficient of relatedness. I'm not going to ask that. But all that means is you can actually calculate your genetic relationship to another organism. So naturally, you and your parents are related 0.5. You're 0.5 to mom and you're 0.5 to dad. Okay. You are 0.25 to your sibling. No. Yeah, your sibling, you are 0.25 to your siblings. Now, yeah, isn't it 0.25? 0.5. They're 0.5. Yeah, anyways. What ends up happening with that is, genetically speaking, that's what inclusive fitness, kin selection, that's the whole purpose of those. And same thing for altruism. An organism, to be altruistic, needs to have the potential of passing on its genes. So if you are more closely related to the other organism, like it's you and a sibling, your altruism's going to go up. Why? Because the probability of your genes being passed on is more, it's more because you're related, it's just higher. Versus it's you and a third cousin, your coefficient of relatedness isn't very high. So altruism is going to go down. There's this whole idea, you don't need to know it. It's called the Hamilton's rule, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, it goes into all the math behind it. Just know what altruism means. It means that an organism is going to sacrifice its own fitness, meaning it's not going to necessarily reproduce, for the benefit of the population's genes of fitness, because his population probably has a high enough relatedness that he feels his genes are going to be passed on anyways in a way. So altruism, right. Now, kin selection plays into that. If you are altruistic, you probably have kin selection acting in your population or group or herd or pride or something like that. Okay. Trying to increase the fitness. Like I said, 42, all the climate and Hadley cells, adiabatic cooling, all that I don't care about. Mark recapture, I did that. Oh, the patterns of dispersion, real quick, clumped versus uniform versus random. All that means is organisms will disperse their populations in certain patterns. The most common one, if you think about it, what would be the most common kind of organization of populations? Clumped, uniform, random. Think about it. It ultimately comes down to clumped. Clumped is the most common distribution of organisms, but here's the reason why. Any kind of dispersion of the organisms comes down to resources and territory. So clumped dispersion is pockets of organisms clustered around a particular resource. Think about human society. Think about the discovery of the world, right? Think about when we were moving westward. People set up shop next to the railroads. People set up shop next to a water well. People set up shop next to food. You go where the resources are. So organisms are clumped, especially now with our influence through habitat fragmentation and us constantly changing the resources for organisms. Yeah, they're becoming even more clumped because their resources are being divided much more. So clumped, most common. Then you've got uniform and random. The uniform, here's the unique thing about the uniform. If it's a uniform dispersion, that usually means that it's territorial, that the organism has its particular resource, its particular habitat, you best back off, okay? So there's usually some kind of territory around that one organism that it gets to claim as its own. Pine tree farms are very good about this. They're very uniform. They have this tree and this tree has this, and they have their own little set pockets and they have their own little, soil and stuff, and you don't come around it. Bird species, some bird species, not all, Like I said, penguins in the Prezi, they are uniform. They have their one little pocket of area. Random doesn't really go according to much resource or anything. Random you can see usually in R selected species, ones that put off a lot of offspring and it just kind of wherever they end up. So difference between those. Let's see, survivorship curves. Don't forget your survivorship curves. There's only 3. So over your age and then your number of individuals. Survivorship curve 1. Number of individuals survive longest and start to die at older age. That's mammals and humans. Okay. Survivorship curve 1 is also, I mean, we can go ahead and label it. It's not going to work out perfect every time, but survivorship curve 1, this is also going to be usually your K-selected species. K-selected species. These organisms are, what it means to be K or R selected, it's referring to your reproductive pattern. So if you're K-selected, you are putting in a lot of parental care, you're having few offspring, you're letting your offspring mature under your parental care, and you're usually living close to carrying capacity. That's why you're having fewer offspring, because you know you don't have a lot of resources, so you want to put a lot into that one set of offspring. So this would be a lot of mammals. This would be humans, obviously. This is going to be larger trees that put a lot of effort into one seed. So like coconuts. Coconut trees are K-selected. Pineapple trees are K-selected. They put a lot of effort into just one little fruit or one big seed. Okay. Survivorship curve 2. You have equal death throughout the ages of the organism. Survivorship curve 2, that's going to be rodents, mollusks, amphibians, reptiles. Okay, that's going to be that one. And then you have survivorship curve 3. Okay, this one's going to be more like your R-selected species. This is going to be your insects. This is going to be some fish. Okay, in the R-selected species, they have, look at what that R is. That R is your per capita increase. They have a lot of offspring in their population. They have a lot of offspring from one organism. Okay, they're spreading that out really thick. Okay, so in an R-selected species, you have high number of organisms because they're going to die really fast. Okay, not a much, very low survival rate, high infant mortality here. So in an R-selected species, they don't put any parental care in. They aren't really ever operating near carrying capacity. They have, like I said, what did I just say? High offspring. They have high offspring numbers because they don't expect many of them to survive. Okay. Just kind of going back to my paper real quick, seeing if there's anything. Density dependent, independent, all that means is what factor, all the things that can affect a population, would you qualify them as an independent factor from the size of the population or a dependent factor on the size of the population? So if a population gets affected by the factor because of their size, it's dependent, density dependent. That's disease, parasites, competition, predation, things that if you had 5 in an area or 5,000 in the area, it will affect. Versus the density independent, it doesn't matter whether there's 5 or 5,000 in that area, it will affect the area the exact same way. That would be your natural disasters, your human activity, war and stuff. Similarity and heteroparity, you don't need to go into that, it's fine. Resource partitioning, invasive species and stuff. Okay, so if you have 2 niches are how you use your habitat or the function of your habitat, not the where, but the function of it. If you have 2 overlapping niches, then those niches are, those organisms that live in that niche are going to have one of 3 things happen. Thank you for the review. I got to turn in for that. Oh, yeah, you go, chickadee. I'm so going to freaking crash. If you have overlapping organisms, then they have one of three options. One of them's got to die. One of them's got to leave, or they're going to, or sorry, there's really four. Or they're going to, well, really three. They're going to have to diverge more from each other. They're going to have to become more separate species. And the only way that can happen is through what we call resource partitioning. So they're going to have to figure out a way to separate what is in their niche differently. So that's where one species of bird takes the top half of the tree, the one takes the bottom of the tree. One feeds on this side of the tree, one feeds on that side of the tree. That's all resource partitioning refers to. Okay. Know some examples of invasive species and why they're bad, right? We don't like them. They don't have any natural predators. Population like crazy, okay? Trophic cascade, understand how that's related to keystone species. If you alter, well, they're connected, but it's not the only way a trophic cascade happens. So if you have anything to do with a keystone species, if you alter a keystone species, that has effect on biotic and abiotic factors in a population. The Yellowstone wolves, they affected the deer, they affected the grass, and they affected the river. Both biotic and abiotic were caused. Now, how that connects to a trophic cascade. If you look at the word trophic cascade, trophic for feeding level. Cascade because it's going to affect all the way down somehow. So if you affect a secondary consumer, it's going to affect a primary, it's going to affect a producer. Just how that all works. Okay. So understand that trophic cascade, if you have any kind of disturbance in your population or your ecosystem somehow, it's going to ultimately find its way down. So anytime you have some kind of series of events that affect a trophic level after trophic level after trophic level, we summarize that up to be a trophic cascade. Okay. Know your cycles, right? If I really got to teach you the water cycle, too late for that. Carbon cycle, really shouldn't have to talk to you about photosynthesis and respiration, combustion. The nitrogen cycle, that's the only one that you might have to remember a little bit. Can't stress this enough. So the nitrogen cycle, it's centered around nitrogen gas in our air, goes into our soil. Bacteria fix it. So that's called nitrogen fixation. When they fix it, they turn it into nitrates. Oops, that's supposed to be 3. They turn into nitrates. Those nitrates then can be used by plants. Yay, look at this pretty plant, okay? Nitrates get used by the plants, but not necessarily all nitrates get used by the plants. Some of those nitrates can then be converted into ammonia, okay, or ammonium. Some of those nitrates then get used by different bacteria, go back into the atmosphere, and that's called denitrification. We're putting it back into its gaseous form. We're taking it back out of organic, or not even organic, it's inorganic soil molecule and putting it back into its gas form, okay? Anything else I could potentially answer? I think we kind of covered everything. Like I said, to me, the most important thing is the math. Okay, the math. So look at that if you need to. Some more. I don't know that I don't remember if I was able to put math on the quizzes. I don't think I did because I would have to adjust the minutes a lot on it. But I did ask about some of the equations and stuff. So what is production efficiency? I didn't take it off of your test review, so you don't have to actually be concerned with that. I went ahead and answered it for you. But the product efficiency, ultimately, you're still just looking, or not, keep saying product efficiency. Production efficiency, all you're looking at there is I just went blank. Sorry. So when you're looking at your production efficiency and stuff, you're taking into account all of your gross primary productivity. There you go. Your GPP. You're taking in all that account. You're taking in all the photosynthesis and stuff like that. But then you also got to account for something else we call secondary production, and that's if you have organisms that don't necessarily go through photosynthesis and stuff. So chemosynthesis include that too. But then secondary production is ultimately what gets passed on to the next trophic level for your consumers. And then the product or production efficiency is what is not ultimately used for the respiration in your organisms, okay? What is just stored or what we would call assimilated in the food. What assimilation means is, so a plant will assimilate nitrates and ammonia. So those molecules will assimilate into the plant tissue. And so anything that is not necessarily getting used up for respiration and it's not going to be passed on is what we would end up calling the percentage of energy for the production efficiency. It's another small, like, just all it is subtraction, just like the GPP, but I'm not going to ask about it. I just need to take it off of the test review. So don't even worry about that question. I just went ahead and answered it for you just so you'd have it. So no stresses. Don't worry about it. Take it off. Anything else? I have a ton of more stuff to do, so I got to go. Thanks for reviewing. No problem. Okay. Does Jenny have any questions? Any questions from Jenny? I think the YouTube one actually worked a lot better than the last thing that I attempted to do. That was such a headache. She says no. Okay. All righty. Well, then, is there anything else you need, Lizzie? Anything at all? If not, I am so going to bed because life is exhausting. I think we're good. Thank you so much. No problem, chickadee. All right. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye.